Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. This is Blue Liner Milsips, where we celebrate and learn all about military surplus firearms. Hey, if you liked the video, please hit that like button, subscribe if you want to see more of the content, and feel free to leave a comment or a question below. This week we are discussing the U.S. rifle caliber 30 model of 1917. Now this is the fourth video in our series on the U.S. service rifles. Our last video discussed the M1903 Springfield, which was the official U.S. main battle rifle during World War I. But while the M1903 was the official main battle rifle, it was not the most used service rifle in World War I. That distinction goes to the M1917, which is what we have here. When the U.S. entered World War I in April of 1917, the U.S. Army had only 95,000 active duty soldiers, and the U.S. National Guard had another about 98,000 part-time soldiers for deployment. These soldiers had been issued the M1903, and at that time, the M1903 was only being made at two places, the Springfield Armory and the Rock Island Armory. The U.S. plan for World War I after they entered was to raise an army from the U.S. of about 4 million soldiers for deployment overseas. And there was no way that those two armories could even come close to making that many rifles in the time needed. So the U.S. Army Ordnance Department begins to look around for a solution. They reached out to some of the private gun makers in the U.S., like Remington and Winchester, about retooling their assembly lines to start making the M1903. At that time, Remington, Winchester, and a Pennsylvania company called Eddystone, which is a subsidiary of Remington, had been contracted by the British government to make British pattern 14 rifles, chambered in the .303 British cartridge, as a replacement for the British Army's Lee Enfield SMLE rifle. That is a rifle we will cover in a later video. The British had contracted for these three companies to make the British pattern 14 rifle. The British armories in Enfield and Birmingham and Lithgow in Australia and Ishapur in India were making the SML3s, the SMLEs. So what was eventually determined was that it would take too long and cost too much money to retool all three companies' assembly lines to make the M1903. The M1903 was a very difficult rifle to make. It took a lot of tooling and a lot of work. Therefore, it was decided that the British would forego their contracts for a price. I believe the U.S. paid them about $9 million. And the three companies would retool but make the very same rifle, but in the U.S. 30-06 caliber and not the British .303 caliber. The factories could be retooled very quickly this way. All they had to change was the chambering and begin cranking out a U.S. version of the British pattern 14 rifle to be named U.S. Rifle Caliber 30 Model of 1917. Now, some call this the American Enfield. I just call it the M1917 because I don't believe it is an Enfield rifle, let alone an American Enfield. But you may call it whatever you wish and let that debate continue on. Now, if we were to set a British pattern 14 next to this rifle, it would look almost identical. But I don't have a pattern 14 rifle currently, so here is a picture to show you what a pattern 14 rifle looks like. I will go over a few differences between the two. To begin with, let's talk about the cartridges. So this is a US 30-06 cartridge, and this is a British .303 cartridge. You can already see that the British .303 cartridge is a little bit larger. It has a rimmed casing, so you can see that the rim sticks out just a little bit. It's a rimmed cartridge, while the 30-06 is not a rimmed cartridge. It is flat. Because of this, and you can see the rimmed round and the little larger than the 30-06, it's a little bit bigger than the 30-06. Because of this, the U.S. version of the 1917 internal magazine could accept 6 30-06 cartridges, while the British Pattern 14 could only take 5 303 British cartridges in its internal magazine. So that's one difference. Both were fed through the top via a stripper clip. Some other differences are the finger grooves on the stock. You can see right here there are finger grooves. The US put that on their rifles. You won't find that on a Pattern 14. And also the M1917 does not have volley sights. Now the British P14 had volley sights, and what that is here on the left. There's a little lever that would come up here and another set of sights down here. And that was meant for really long-range volley fire, where just a bunch of soldiers wanted to throw rounds 2,000 yards downrange, but not at a specific target. So it had volley sights. The U.S. never had that in their military doctrine, so there was no volley sights put on the M1917. Other than that, the U.S. M1917 and the British Pattern 14 are really identical. So let's look at some of the characteristics of the M1917. It weighs 9.2 pounds. It's 46.3 inches long in total, and the barrel is 26 inches long. The bolt is very much like a Mauser-style bolt, but unlike the German Mausers, this bolt is a cock-on close, not a cock-on open like German Mausers. We'll show you that in a moment. The British preferred a cock-on close bolt like their currently Enfield rifles were. So when they came up with the Pattern 14, they made the bolt a cock-on close. And so that carried over to the M1917. Also, unlike the German Mauser rifles, the safety is not on the bolt, but on the side of the rifle. The safety is right here. So if we were to cock this, the safety is over here on the side. And that's the safety. All right, so that's how the safety works. The front sights have large protective ears for with a blade sight in between right here. The rear sight is an aperture sight with a battle zero of 400 yards with a ladder sight that can be flipped up, and that ladder sight can be done all the way out to 1,600 yards. The maker will be named on the top of the receiver. As we can see in this case, turn it around this way, you can see this is a US model of 1917, and it says Eddystone. So this is an Eddystone rifle made by the Eddystone Company. All right, the bayonet for the M1917 is a 17-inch sword bayonet. This is the same as had been planned for the Pattern 14. It's 17 inches long, 22 inches overall. And it attaches via a lug on the front of the rifle. So I'm going to stop the video now while I reset the camera angle. We're going to take out the bolt and show how the bolt disassembly and reassembly works. So hang with me for a few, and I'll be right back for that. Okay, everybody, we are back. We are going to do our bolt disassembly and reassembly of the M1917. Now, there are multiple ways to do this, and I've always been of the adage, work smarter, not harder. Now, there is an official way to do this that's in the manual. I don't do it that way because I tend to get pieces of skin stuck in tension spots, which hurts very much, which is why I always wear gloves. But I believe that my way is a pretty good way of doing this and lessens the part where I get hurt. So I have a bolt disassembly tool here, and I will show you why I like this. And it's actually just a washer with the bottom snipped out of it. So since this is a cock on close bolt, just like any other Mauser style bolt, we have to unscrew the bolt sleeve with the firing pin and the pin in it and all that from the bolt body. In order to do that, we have to move the cocking piece back and get it out of the way. So the best way I have found to do that is to bring the bolt back, put the safety on, and then close the bolt. Make sure that that safety stays down. And what happens then is you can see here, get my pokey, you can see here that the cocking piece is kind of hyperextended right here. That's when I put in my tool. Then it will stay if I move it up. So what that's going to do is when I release this now, it's going to keep that cocking piece back. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bolt. Now to remove the bolt, we have, just like on most Mauser style, there's a bolt release here on the side. And all we have to do is pull that out and the bolt will come out. So now we have our cocking piece here kind of hyperextended with that tool holding it in place. Now you can see that there's actually a hook under here. The sear part is right here. There's actually a hook right here. The official way to do it is to hook either a cartridge case or a piece of sturdy string to pull it back, and then you unscrew it. I just put this bolt tool in here, and now I can unscrew it out. And the bolt tool is still in there. So now we can take that apart just like we would any other Moser bolt. Again, we have a big external extract with its groove, and if we want to take it out, we just move it over to the side and push up, and the extractor comes out. Now to undo this, all we have to do is put our firing pin on a piece of wood that will hard, but not so hard that we will break anything, and then pull down. We can remove our piece. Our cocking piece turns 45 degrees and then it comes out. Then we can take off the bolt sleeve, and there's our firing pin and our firing pin spring, our cocking piece, our bolt sleeve, and our bolt is disassembled. Now to put it back together is obviously just a reverse. So we'll start with the bolt body here. We have kind of our rails here that are going to go into this right here, and then we have this kind of the top piece, which is the actual extractor, and then this, which is goes into the groove right here under the lip. So the first thing we have to do is get it to go over the thing, and then it'll come down. And this is always the difficult part because that sleeve will move. See if I can get this to go fairly easily. It has to be done over here where there is no groove. And kind of, it doesn't seem to want to go. There we go. And then once we get that on there, we can take and we push this out, just out and down, so that it will go. There we go. And then all we got to do is turn it, and it will go right into the groove. It will just snap in. And there it is. There it is. Snap back in. Okay. Now for the bolt itself. The bolt guts itself. Firing pin spring. Now on the firing pin, there is, on each side, there's a flat spot. And that is, there's a corresponding flat spot in here that it has to go on. But it doesn't matter what side you use. So our spring here is omnidirectional. We're going to bring the spring down and put our bolt sleeve on. Once we get the bolt sleeve, we will take and turn it all the way down, put our cocking piece on, and give it that 45 degrees. Now we want to put our bolt tool disassembly tool back in, so we'll pull it back down and come around on this side. And there we go. Now we have our cocking piece towards the rear. And when that happens, we can go ahead and screw in our bolt. Now you want to make sure that the bolt is right there so that this piece, so that the groove here is on top. And now we can go ahead and put it back into the rifle. You have to pull our piece out here to get the bolt back in, which doesn't seem to want to go. There we go. And now with the safety still on, we can put it in. And now we can remove that bolt tool. It'll come back. We can turn the safety off. And there we go. And the bolt is reassembled and back in. All right, hang with me for just one more segment, and we'll do a conclusion of our M1917. I'll be right back. Okay, and we are back. Now, the three private gun makers, Remington, Winchester, and Eddystone, made just under 2.2 million M1917 rifles from 1917 to 1919. Of the U.S. service members in France during World War I, about 2/3 to 3/4 would be issued the 1917. So while the 1917 was not officially the U.S. service main battle rifle in World War I, that was the Springfield 1903, the 1917 was the most used battle rifle during World War I. Now, regular Army and National Guard units were typically issued the 1903, while the M1917 was issued to units of what was called the National Army. National Army was made up of the volunteers and the conscripts drafted from the populace. And these National Army units made up a majority of the divisions that were eventually sent to France. After World War I, the U.S. put many of these rifles in storage. The M1917 was never meant to replace the 1903 as the U.S. main battle service rifle. It was a temporary stopgap measure meant to solve a specific rifle shortage during the First World War. That's it. The Springfield 1903 would remain the U.S. service rifle until 1936. The U.S. government also gave M1917s to certain allies like in the Philippines. Some were sold commercially, and during World War II, some of these in storage were brought back. They were given to British Home Guard units, and they were dropped to free French resistance on the continent. Now, that is all for the video on the U.S. rifle caliber 30 model of 1917. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me today. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you for watching all the way through. Our next video on the U.S. Service Rifle series will be the last video in this series, and we will cover the single most iconic U.S. service rifle of all time. The Springfield 1903 was the most iconic bolt-operated rifle. This one is just the most iconic U.S. service rifle of all time. The rifle that the U.S. used to win World War II in both Europe and the Pacific theaters. The rifle General George Patton called the greatest battle implement ever devised. That rifle will be the subject of our next and last U.S. service main battle rifle video series. Make sure you join me for that video. Thanks again for hanging out with me today. Be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more content, and leave a comment or a question below. Hey, you have a great rest of your day or rest of your week, whatever the case may be, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.